In October 1890, a curious volume went on sale in the bookstores of New York. Called How the Other Half Lives, it had been written by a 41-year-old Danish-born police reporter named Jacob Riis. It would change forever the way people thought about the city. Riis had come to New York in 1870, when he was just 21, with $40 in his pocket. Eventually, he landed on his feet and managed to find work as a police reporter for the New York Tribune, and spent the next 10 years exploring the densely crowded slums of the Lower East Side. The sights, he later said, gripped my heart until I felt that I must tell of them or burst. Determined to show the world what he had seen, Riis began publishing magazine articles, but they seemed to make no impression, he wrote. He thought of taking pictures, but the tenements were too dark for the photographs to come out. Then, in 1887, a breakthrough came with the invention of a new photographic device, a magnesium flash powder that flooded even the deepest shadow with a brilliant flash of light. Armed with the new apparatus, Riis and his assistants plunged into the Five Points. The images Riis brought back brought wealthy and middle-class New Yorkers face to face with a reality most had long sought to avoid. Their city, one of the wealthiest in the world, had become home to more than 1 million overworked and undernourished people, often living in conditions of unspeakable horror. He went everywhere, carrying his camera down obscure courtyards and back ways with names like Ragpicker's Row, Blind Man's Alley, and Bottle Alley. In a place called Bandit's Roost, he photographed a dozen men, all said to be wanted for murder. He was especially moved by the plight of the young, the ragged street Arabs who sold newspapers by day and slept in alleys by night. The child laborers, who often worked 7 days a week in stifling factories and sweatshops. And the tens of thousands of abandoned and orphaned children who had been left to fend for themselves. But what horrified him most was the unspeakable conditions in which so many New Yorkers were forced to live.
I went up the dark stairs in one of those tenements, and there I trod upon a baby. It is the regular means of introduction in the old dark houses, but I was never able to get used to it. I photographed the baby, standing with its back against the public sink, in a pool of filth that overflowed on the floor. I do not marvel that 1 in 5 children in the rear tenement, into which the sunlight never comes, was killed by the house. It seems strange, rather, that any survived. Jacob Riis.
How the Other Half Lives awakened New Yorkers to the condition of the poor, as nothing else had. It was a new way of seeing the world, a modern way, and Riis used it not only to underscore his outrage, but to spur people to action. The slums were not inevitable, he insisted. They had been built by men and women could change them. Not long after the book was published, New York's energetic young civil service commissioner, Theodore Roosevelt, called on Riis at his office on Printing House Square. The writer was out, but Roosevelt left his calling card with a note on the back. "I have read your book," it said, "and I have come to help."